Hi, I'm Paul McLean. I'm a fine arts specialist with the Georgia Department of Education. My background happens to be in theater and film, and this is telling our stories or strategies for introducing students to playwriting and writing a 10-minute play. So playwriting is a key element required in many theater classes, which makes sense considering that telling stories is the primary function of theater. Unfortunately, playwriting is not always a central part of theater training, depending on the area of focus when pursuing an education in the art form. So this webinar looks at strategies and resources for introducing playwriting to students with the goal of developing an original script. The resources and outline are intended to provide useful resources for teachers that have a wide variety of experience, from limited background in playwriting to those with extensive training. The resources and activities can be used in classes from 6th grade theater arts to high school dramatic writing. We will take a look at the role and process of the playwright, appropriate formatting for a theatrical script, distinguishing characteristics of dramatic dialogue, dramatic characters, dramatic plot, and dramatic structure. We're also going to take a look at Aristotle's Elements and how you can break down those categories into different approaches to playwriting as a whole. The role of the playwright. The playwright is the person who crafts the play. That's why it's spelled Playwright. This is because it is wrought like a craft more than it is written. The playwright is the crafts person. The process of crafting the play, though, is called, ironically, playwriting. Playwriting. In brief, playwrights do the playwriting. So this is what the playwright does. So the playwright is the only theatrical artist that does not need to first read the script. Every other artist associated with scripted theater has the job of interpreting text rather than starting from scratch. As with non-theatrical literature, it is crucial to engage in the same types of research processes to mine personal experience, imagination, and facts to avoid cliché in order to develop a nuanced and engaging original script. In order to do this, the playwright must select a subject that is personally interesting and engaging. Just as the director cannot effectively direct a script that they don't find interesting, an actor cannot engage creatively with a role where there is no connection, the playwright, likewise, will not be able to fully commit to the process of writing a play if they don't find it interesting. So a good rule of thumb for beginning playwrights is to write the play you want to see. Now we're going to talk about determining a focus and emphasis. Specificity is crucial to avoiding generic cliché choices in all aspects of theater. In many ways, closing doors to what you are not focusing on allows for more freedom to explore the areas you have defined in more depth. Similar to the process of zeroing in on a research topic for a research paper, the playwright must select a specific focus or emphasis for the subject matter. He must establish a purpose. This aspect speaks to what the playwright wants to achieve through the performance of the play. How does the playwright want the audience to experience this play? Part of establishing a purpose is selecting a genre, a category of artistic or literary composition. It's characterized by a particular style. Some common theatrical genres will be discussed later in this webinar. Establishing the point of view. Once the purpose is established, you need to know whose story this is. Theatrical literature and screenplays tend to have a narrow set of perspective through which the story is told. Even when plays feature multiple characters with important arcs, traditionally there is a dominant story with threads of lesser storylines mixed in. This is a reflection of the dramatic plot structure, which we will explore later in the webinar. The choices around the point of view may depend heavily on the playwright's established purpose. Certain perspectives may fit the intended genre or goals better than others. Write before you write. Once these 4 decisions have been made, the playwright can start the process of pre-writing and research. There is an axiom that writing is rewriting, but many authors find that writing is actually pre-writing. Pre-writing is the free writing period that comes before it blends into the organizational stage. This is jotting down thoughts associated with all 3 areas of research, meaning your personal life, your imaginative life, and your factual research. This also includes anything else you might want to explore before taking it into actual dialogue and structuring the scenes. The length of time and focus on each of these steps depends on the challenges of the project. On the screen is a brief outline of the stages involved in developing a theatrical script. Number 1, pre-write. This includes researching your own memory, your own imagination, what would happen if I were in this situation, or if others were in this situation, and the research of fact, your actual literal observations of the world around you, or factual research from a library or other sources. Plot mapping. Laying out the events in a manner that makes sense with a dramatic plot structure. The final plan may look very different from this early stage, but organizing your thoughts and having an idea as to where you were going is incredibly helpful in the later stages of the process. Number 2, write drafts. Number 3, read. Number 4, revise. Number 5, write again. Number 6, share and get feedback. Number 7, revise. Number 8, share and get feedback. Number 9, revise. Number 10, share and get feedback. Number 11, revise. So this can go on ad infinitum. And really, the only reason you would stop is because you've come to an area where you feel that this is ready to move on beyond this simple feedback loop. The next step is staged readings. This is a formal, rehearsed reading with a live audience followed by a full critical response process. After the staged reading, typically rewrites occur again, and then you can ease your way into informal performances. This is a difficult stage for most playwrights to get to. It is often expensive and time-consuming, as it involves getting someone to semi-produce the play with full blocking, and then it is followed by a critical response process. Many playwrights participate in submitting to competitions that offer this stage as a reward. After that, often there are rewrites, and then pitching and producing your script. Theatrical script formatting. The playwriting format for theater is not as crucial to having people read the script as it is with a screenplay. There is no singular, absolute correct way to format a theatrical script. Some playwrights use the script formatting to make statements about characters and movements within the play. Many playwriting competitions have unique formatting submission rules that change over time. That being said, there are some generally accepted norms that exist for the formatting of an unpublished script. New scripts do not typically look like the formatting found in published examples. General expectations include the following. Act and scene headings are centered on the page. Characters' names are centered and capitalized. Stage directions are indented, one tab, and italicized. Characters' names in stage directions are capitalized, and parenthetical stage directions are used for small actions. Margins. Generally speaking, the margins are expected to have a top margin of 1 inch, a left margin of 1.5 inches, and a right margin of 1 inch with a bottom margin of 1 inch. You can set your device to these margins to write within, or there are a host of playwriting software available online and to purchase that will actually set it up for you, and then you don't have to think about this particular arrangement of the margins. This is an example of a title page where you can see we have all of the information that is expected on the front, no more information than what is listed here. Beyond that, it begins to get considered a little unprofessional. This is an example of the characters, the dramatis personae example. And then this is an example of the main body with all of those margins we discussed. The Aristotelian elements as they relate to playwriting. Even with the focus on the dramatic plot, dramatic character, dramatic dialogue, the playwright's work can fall into the trap of reading like a novel if the perspective of the audience is lost. For this reason, it is often helpful to look at the descriptive criticism of Aristotle's Poetics. The Poetics is the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory in Western literature and provides a descriptive criticism of tragedy, which focuses on the audience's experience of the work. This external appreciation of the play experience is invaluable to the playwright for remembering to include all of the necessary aspects to be effective with an audience. The Aristotelian elements: plot, events that occur over time related to the conflict. Character, the agents of the plot. Theme, the subject, purpose, focus, and perspective. This contextual definition may be different from how theme is often discussed in ELA. Lexicon, the word choice found in dramatic dialogue. Music, everything that is heard on stage. This includes not only actual music, but planned sound effects. Also the sounds of the actors' voices and dialects. Spectacle, everything that is seen or heard on the stage. Sets, costumes, lights, sounds. The categories serve as excellent tools not only for observing and documenting the experience of an existing play, but also in the planning and mapping out of a play in the process being written. It's a good idea to use each of these categories as a jumping off point for each of the three categories of writerly research, meaning your research of your personal memory, your imaginative research, and research of fact. Dramatic plot structure, or plot. The term drama comes from the Greek dran, which is to do or act. In this way, drama is related to action. Dramatic structure then refers to specifically active structure, where events happen in a particular sequence. All theatrical scripts have conflict. Typically, the progression of how characters deal with the conflict follows a basic story structure with a clear beginning, middle, and end. When engaging in the plot mapping stage of this writing process, it's a good idea to remember this beginning, middle, and end structure for laying out when you want specific actions to take place. The Freytag pyramid can be a useful tool when looking at the organization of events in the play and can help with the plot mapping. The Freytag pyramid is a modification of Aristotle's structure when he transformed the triangle into the pyramid. It includes an exposition, a rising action, a climax, falling action, and denouement or resolution. You can see an example on the screen here. Placing scenes or titles or even events along this structure could be a useful tool in building the play outline. It's also important to note that while a classical structure may have a shape that looks like this in a true triangle, often that falling action in modern plays is not so evenly balanced with the rising action. Another way to look at discussing the dramatic structure is to break down the beginning, middle, and end. So characteristics of the beginning might include what some folks call a point of normalcy. This is the state of the world as it is. Often, when telling stories, it's a broken state of the world, an imperfect or an unsustainable state of the world. Then there is an interruption. This is the inciting incident. This is an interruption to the normalcy, the point at which something occurs, forcing characters into action to deal with the conflict. Then there are characteristics of the middle. The conflict is the main character's want. The rising action is a series of events created by the main character's decision based on the character's want. You can think in terms of, but then blank happens. Therefore, blank happens. Now, the climax is the point of no return, when the character has done something that they cannot get back from. One of the ways I like to describe it is it's like a chemical change. Up to the point of the climax, it's just a physical change. We can go from water that is liquid to solid to back to liquid to steam if we had to. But once we have that chemical change, like a burning log, there is no coming back from that point. And then characteristics of the end. We have falling action as a result of the climax, and these build on one another. And the term falling action does not necessarily mean the play is slowly calming down. It is truly falling. Some of the most intense scenes take place in that falling action because it's like a boulder gathering speed as it goes towards the resolution. Resolution is the state of the new world after all of the action has been done, and then the final moment is often related to the point of normalcy, often a comparison of how things stand now after the actions of the characters in comparison to how things were before the characters began to act. Dramatic character and theatrical genres. Just as dramatic plot structure refers to a plot structure full of events or action, dramatic characters are likewise active characters that convey information to the audience. The dramatic characters are sources of information for the audience through their appearance, dialogue, monologues or soliloquies, and action. Characters are abstractions of humanity that create the illusion of life. In addition to the traditional protagonist and antagonist, several types of dramatic characters are found in different genres of theater. This is a list of common dramatic characters. Extraordinary characters. These characters are larger than life. They're typified by gods and kings that exist beyond the realm of day-to-day life for common man. These examples might include Shakespeare's King Lear or Euripides' Dionysus. These characters exist in classical tragedy. Representative or quintessential characters. These characters are more like common man. They have concerns and lives which the audience can relate to or empathize with. These might include Arthur Miller's Willy Loman, Ibsen's Nora. These characters are often associated with realism or contemporary tragedy. Stock characters. These are stereotypical fictional characters that are often two-dimensional and repeated often as tropes in multiple stories, such as Arlecchino from Commedia or the Harlequin, or any sitcom character. You find these in comedy all over the place. The dominant trait character. These characters are governed by a specific singular personality, such as greed or nervousness or confusion, but they don't fall into the common stock type. Ebenezer Scrooge is a good example. Moliere's The Miser. Then we have minor characters. These characters exist to further the larger plot. The classic example in Shakespeare is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Hamlet, featured as main characters in Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. A narrator character can also be used. These characters often break the fourth wall and directly interact with the audience to tell or comment on the plot. The stage manager in Wilder's Our Town is a good example. You can also have non-human characters. These characters often have specific personalities and communication capabilities of humans, but they're characters that are written as non-humans. You can think of this as like the animals in The Lion King. A combination of character types and structures of the plot often determine the genre of the play. A genre is a category of artistic or literary composition characterized by a particular style. Common theatrical genres include, but are not limited to, classical tragedy, modern tragedy, comedy, tragicomedy, and docudramas. Now the lexicon. The lexicon is all of the words in the play. We're going to look at lexicon through the lens of dramatic dialogue. Dramatic dialogue refers to the active use of the text by the characters. This is often similar to dialogue found in traditional literature. The main difference is the weight it carries in terms of conveying the plot. A theatrical text relies heavily on the dialogue to convey as much of the plot as possible. For this reason, it's beneficial to put as much of the action into the spoken words as possible. While stage directions are an effective tool to convey mood and action to a director, the best way to guarantee specific action on stage for the audience is to put it in the dialogue. Dramatic dialogue is active dialogue. In classical plays, often the only actions indicated by the stage directions were entrances and exits. Even those were echoed by characters, lines referencing the entrance of characters or the need to leave. Dialogue should be driven by the character's needs. The following are some stage conventions associated with the words that characters say. Dialogue. This specifically means multiple characters speaking to one another, all attempting to achieve their own goals. Monologue. A longer speech on stage, often in the presence of other characters. A soliloquy, a private monologue, or a monologue directly addressing the audience where a character speaks inner thoughts aloud. Direct address, this is speaking directly to the audience, breaking the fourth wall. Choral speech, this would be characters speaking the same lines in unison or singing the lines together. These are found in Greek theater and other poetic styles. Character voice. A character's speech helps illustrate the character's personality. A pitfall for young playwrights is that all characters in the play often sound the same, very often like the playwright. Some common aspects of character dialogue that contribute to character voice include the following: the length of speeches, length of sentences, characteristic fillers, such as, vocabulary level, word size, types of sentences, meaning statements, questions, exclamations, inclusion of humor, irony, sarcasm, sentence structure or syntax, sentence integrity, are they whole or fragmentary sentences, patterns, repetition, concrete or figurative language, does the character use idioms, similes, or metaphors, use of facts or opinions, word choice, use of slang, how emotional states affect the verbal communication. The best way to learn more about what makes someone's speech sound natural and unique is to research. Researching the way other writers you admire create voice is a nice start, but researching the written word should not be done in isolation. It is important to continue observing the living world around you in order to make sure your characters will ring true. Go to a public place, observe, bring a notebook, write down what you hear, your impression of the word choices. Are the people speaking loud, diminutive, funny? Do they have any repeated patterns, or do they use slang? Keeping a regular journal of research specifically focused on conversation is an invaluable source for generating new content. Researching is only a part of the puzzle, though. It's one thing to have a working knowledge of how people speak, but making the right choices for your character can be daunting. It is often difficult to make consistent and effective choices about a character's speech if you don't have a clear sense of the character and their purpose. In order to have clarity of who your character is and what your character wants, you need to make some decisions. One of the first places to start is a quick character analysis questionnaire. Actors use these frequently to flesh out the unwritten aspects of who the character is. The following example is a great way to start deciding the life behind the character. What's your character's name? What's your character's age? What is your character's social position? Describe your character's physical appearance. Where does your character live? What does your character look like? Name one thing that would make your character angry. Describe a typical day for your character. Describe a dream your character has had. Pretend your character has a secret. What is it? Why is it a secret? What is your character's goal? Obviously, all of these relate back to a character in terms of how an actor understands what they're doing, but sometimes this depth of understanding is overlooked by early playwrights. If you're thinking in terms of who your character is, what their surroundings are, and what they want, you can't go wrong with how they speak. Answering these questions helps to solidify some aspects of the character's backstory. The next step is to create a brief backstory or bio for your character. This doesn't need to be very long, but having pre-existing information about where this person came from and what life experiences shape the way they see the world will make it easier to understand what choices they may make within the plot. We all wear different masks with different people. Michael Shurtleff's Auditions provides actors with 12 guideposts that help an actor create specific choices about a character in a timely fashion. Writers can also get a great deal out of looking at some of Shurtleff's guideposts. Armed with a brief backstory and key questions about who the character is, the next element to consider is how the characters engage with other characters and how they deal with specific situations. The suggested exercise is to answer the guidepost questions as the character. Relationship. How do I interact with others? Am I direct, nervous, flippant? Does it change depending on the person I'm speaking to? How? Conflict. What am I fighting for? What is my dream and how can I make it come true? If there is no conflict, why don't you run? The moment before. What was happening seconds before the scene started? In this case, you may not know exactly what was happening seconds before the scene started, as the world is not written yet, but this starts to establish that point of normalcy. Where is the character at the top of the play? Humor. What do I think is funny? How do I use humor in general? Communication and competition. Who am I competing with, and how do I communicate with them to get what I want? Importance. What specific things will happen if I don't get what I want? Place. What is my relationship with the location? Am I comfortable? Is it formal? Is it public? Is it private? Can people hear me? Do I want people to hear me? And mystery and secret. Do I have a secret that no one knows? What do I keep hidden? There is another exploration you can consider in metaphorical character choices. Even after establishing details about the character, it can be difficult to maintain a cohesive voice that embodies all the concepts established by your research. Sometimes the tone or approach of the character is enhanced by focusing on a metaphorical understanding of the character. Selecting a character metaphor often helps unify other choices or aspects of the character so that everything works together in a cohesive manner. These are some common character metaphors that you might consider asking when developing a character. What would this character be if they were a fruit, a vegetable, candy, junk food, car, color, musical instrument, song, fast food chain, video game, TV show, city, magazine, brand of clothing, soft drink? All of this research will help you define a character for a story that is in the early planning stages, but sometimes you simply need to practice creating characters. The following exercises are great ways for generating characters and character voice from scratch. Opening lines. This is an exercise that allows the playwright to attempt to create a clear relationship without using any names or labels like mom, grandpa, teacher, etc. The playwright chooses one of the following lines to be the first line in the scene. These are the lines that are suggested. They're at it again. Listen to them. Come here a minute. I want to show you something. You shouldn't have done that. He didn't mean it. When will I see you again? It's not fair. Did you hear that? I don't understand what you mean. Can we talk about this? Those lines are jumping off points in the middle of action. If you know something about who your character is or make specific choices about who the characters are, these lines will help develop a full monologue. This is a free writing exercise, and it's not necessarily intended for the developing of a specific script, but it's a great way to get into the habit of just naturally writing, particularly if you have students who are not used to doing this. Sharing these stories with other students is a great way to get comfortable with that presenting your work and getting feedback process as well. Characters from photos. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but only the person that puts it on paper decides which words they are. Writing from photos is a great exercise or a journaling practice that allows a playwright to explore research of imagination based on visual prompts. After selecting an intriguing picture, the playwright determines some quick facts about the photo and takes time to answer the guideposts, those 8 or inspired questions about the character, and then the playwright describes their personality, occupation, immediate goals, and decides how this person speaks. All of this pre-writing is based on the photo prior to the established conflict. Once complete, the playwright writes a monologue from the point of view of that character. The character can be speaking to another character or directly to the audience, and you can look for opportunities to show the mastery of the character voice in this exercise. The photos can be pulled from anywhere. We have included on the community site a series of photos that you are welcome to look through. So now it's your turn. Let's build a character. On the communities page in the theater, there is a discussion. If you will click on the discussion, I would love it if you could actually build a character from one of these photos. You could answer the questions that are provided. You could include the photo next to it, and we'd love to start a dialogue between anybody who has watched this video just to discuss what this process was like, how you think it might work in your classroom, or better yet, if you have something that works in your classroom as an early writing exercise, please share that in the community as well. Dynamic dialogue. We have focused on how dramatic plot and dramatic characters are used as key elements to craft a play. The third element, dramatic dialogue, is also necessary to create engaging pacing and believable scenes. We're going to take a look at how character research established in character development can be used in conjunction with the mechanics of the plot to establish truly active dialogue. To do this, we will look at the common tools of an actor that they use to interpret text. But first, having an understanding of the evolution of these actor practices. Stanislavski's system, beats and objectives, and we're also going to look at dialogue pitfalls. Scripts are not passive. They have late points of attack and focus on conflict, which results in a transformative event or series of events that leave characters changed, permanently changed. In ancient Greece, the experience of the play was so focused on the upsetting nature of witnessing the characters negotiate the conflict that the tragedies were said to create a catharsis of pity and fear in the audience. While not all plays are tragedies, the use of conflict to justify action and leaving a character changed is a fundamental part of all story structure. Even in lighthearted comedies, the scenes exist in a logical order based on the conflict and needs of the character. It stands to reason that the dialogue should also be based in the world of the play and in that conflict. In order to keep the dialogue engaging for the audience, it is important to keep the characters focused on the immediate conflict. If the words characters are speaking do not drive the plot and work toward accomplishing a character's immediate goal, they should be reconsidered. The playwright is writing for the actors to speak the language on stage. One way to keep dialogue effective is to consider the process of the actor. Having an understanding of how and why actors interpret lines on stage will streamline the dialogue in a productive manner. To understand the nature of a contemporary text interpretation, it's useful to understand the goals and tools of theatrical realism. Even if the play is not in the style of realism, these underlying principles are often found in successful theatrical texts. As we are aware from studying acting, Konstantin Stanislavski was an actor and director that struggled with inconsistency of performance on stage. He found that one performance would be engaging for the audience, and the next night the same choices could be made, but the performance would fall flat. He developed a system that would aim at creating real life on stage every time. The key principles of his system can be boiled down to the following: the creation of an inner mood, a conscious means to the subconscious, observation of reality, given circumstances, objectives, through line, the magic if, and emotional memory, moment-to-moment acting, illusion of the first time, and working within the ensemble. To that end, he developed a script interpretation tool that focuses on achieving the conscious access to the subconscious. It can be broken down into the following points: super objective, the character's overall goal; obstacles, things that stand in the way of the character achieving the objective; an individual objective, a specific desire of a character within a scene. This desire drives the character to speak and interact with others. It can be looked at as the characters want to, and then an action verb. Tactic, the way in which an objective is pursued. Characters can use multiple tactics to achieve the same objective. They want to do something active by something ing, a gerund. So a good example is running a race. To running a race, what is the super objective? to win the race. If a log falls in the middle of the path, the log is considered an obstacle. The new immediate objective is to simply get past the log, but there are a variety of tactics the character could use to get past the log. They could get past the log by jumping over it, by digging under it, by running around it, sawing through it, eating it, and so on. If the actor would use this approach to understand the way a character would say a line, it follows that the playwright could enhance the process if the words and choices also fit this goal-oriented thought process. The use of this super objective beats, objectives, and tactics is so fundamental to the contemporary actor's use of the text that it has been reconstructed and reinvented for decades. In 1984, Robert Cohen wrote a book called Acting One, which provides an acronym that helps focus actors' choices in how lines are interpreted for the purpose of having conflict-driven choices on the stage. The playwright can also use this process as well. This shorthand approach can be useful to the playwright. He uses the term GOTE, G-O-T-E. The actor or playwright should ask the following questions at any moment on the stage. What is the character's G, goal, O, obstacle, T, tactic, and E, expectation of outcome after the tactic is employed? When engaging in the imaginative research of what a character would say in a given situation, it is critical that the playwright understand the answers to these questions. In scenes with dynamic dialogue, there is a high level of importance for all characters in achieving their objectives. Characters must have a sense of urgency in order to achieve their goals. If it isn't important to the character, it's certainly not going to matter to the audience. If the dialogue is feeling stale, the playwright can raise the stakes of the characters in the scene by going back and looking at the use of the language to reflect the character's immediate objectives and tactics. Answering the questions for GOAT. If the playwright starts developing dialogue from the onset with the focus of character objectives and tactics, they will likely avoid common playwriting pitfalls related to conflict. These pitfalls are the following. Number 1, no conflict. There are no obstacles for the character's wants. The obstacles they are presented with are easily overcome. The problems are minor and the resulting conflict lacks consequence. This is a play or scene that is dead in the water. Number 2, the conflict is resolved too quickly. The change the characters present is not believable because it occurs too soon or too easily. The conflict is not sufficiently challenging for the characters. Number 3, conflict does not progress. The central conflict or dramatic action does not affect change in the scene. Change happens independent of the main conflict of the play. The following are some extended playwriting explorations that could be used in the classroom to build under the trick before you get to that point where you're actually writing a full play. The breakup scene. Write a short scene where characters are breaking up with one another in a public space. The objective of the original character is to end the relationship, but it's complicated by the obstacle of the other character's desire to stay together. Use the physical environment to create additional tension and conflict. Share the dialogues and discuss how different tactics were used in different scenes. Post them in some sort of forum. Comment on 2 other posts. Identify the super objective obstacles, tactics that are being used by the playwright. Comments should be made on the effectiveness of the dialogue choices. This works as a digital exercise, but it also works face-to-face, and it's great to see how the same single prompt will result in multiple, very different scenarios. I've got a secret. Write a 2-person dialogue where one character has an objective they do not want to disclose to the other character. The character with the secret objective should still pursue it actively within the context of the scene. Writing a 10-minute play. No one sits down and writes a finished play. It isn't possible. The theater is a collaborative art, which requires feedback and input from others. In order to get feedback, an outline and first drafts of a scene have to be created. Writing the outline and first drafts of a play can be overwhelming when considering the finished process at the start. For this reason, if students focus on accomplishing one goal at a time, they will eventually arrive at the point of having working drafts that can be ready for the next stage of public feedback and revision. Before we begin, there's a simple breakdown to consider about the 10-minute play. A 10-minute play encompasses a complete journey for the character from the inciting incident through achieving or abandoning their central objective. The structure fits within the confines of a 10-page play with the following general guidelines. Pages 1 to 2, exposition and inciting incident. Pages 3 to 6, rising action. Pages 6 to 8, climax. Pages 9 to 10, falling action and denouement. This is not written in stone as a rule, but it's a great guideline that will help craft a plot that has a fully developed structure without running over the goal of 10 minutes. It's also recommended that you stick to one single location and focus your attention on 2 to 5 characters. The great thing about playwriting is you can break all of those rules, but often students need structure early on before they start exploring those non-structured outlines. In order to achieve the goal of having a draft script ready for feedback, we need to look again at the role of the playwright. Now, the playwright is responsible for the following: selecting a subject, determining a focus and emphasis, establishing a purpose, establishing a point of view in a genre, developing dramatic structure, creating dramatic characters, and shaping dramatic language. While this information is aimed at students to help them understand how they can go through and create a play, it's a good idea as the instructor to also, every time, engage in this process with them. Whenever the teacher can do exactly what the students are doing, it builds trust between them and keeps the teacher fresh in generating new art. Selecting a subject. Selecting a subject might be the most important aspect of writing the play. It is crucial that the appeal of your subject matter come from a personal connection with it. F. Scott Fitzgerald famously said, "You don't write because you want to say something, you write because you have something to say." It is not possible to win the war of cliché writing without having a personal connection to the topic, because the subsequent task of writing will require personal research of memory, research of your own imagination, and research of fact. This is only motivated if you have a connection to the topic. One of the great things about doing some of the earlier writing exercises as a class and giving feedback back and forth before you move into the stage of physically writing a 10-minute play is that you will have developed a series of characters and ideas. One of those ideas, even if it's not your own, might have sparked a particular journey you might want to explore. Number 2, determine a focus and emphasis. Once your subject is determined, you will need to become more specific. It's impossible to write the whole story of the whole topic about anything. Much like the process of narrowing down a specific topic for a research project, you need to narrow down your focus and emphasis. Which part of your larger topic will you explore in the play? Establishing a purpose. What do you want to explore about the focus and emphasis? What do you want the audience to experience? Why? To that end, you will need to determine the point of view and the genre. Establishing point of view. Who is the protagonist? Whose story do we follow? It is useful to have one true protagonist. In terms of conflict, whose fight are we empathizing with? How does this serve the overall goal and purpose? You may begin the process of drafting out characters based on simple analysis questions at this stage. Selecting a genre. What genre of play do you wish to write? Comedy, drama, docudrama, classical tragedy, so on. In order to make this determination, it's also helpful to consider what you want the audience to experience in the play. Some genres are better at achieving some goals than others. For this reason, you might want to research genres. The playwright should actually read and document scenes from plays that fit the styles that they are interested in. As you determine the genre, you will inherently be looking at aspects of dramatic storytelling, such as character types, settings, and potential events that would fit the genre and story you're exploring. At this stage, you may begin the process of brainstorming 1 or 2 outlines of solid plot possibilities. This does not need to include all of the scenes and the rising action, falling action, or even the details of what occurs to cause the climax, but rather the simplest description of the turning point moments, inciting incident, climactic points, general idea of a final resolve. And last but not least, plot, events, acts, and scenes. So during this phase, consider all of the possible events you would like to include in order to arrive at your previously considered plot points. Think in terms of locations and actions. Remember that playwriting is not the same as screenwriting. You have limitations based on the living audience setting. Don't be discouraged from thinking outside the box, though. Creative, dramatic dialogue can go a long way to achieve seemingly impossible goals. Once the actions have been determined, it's time to divide the events into acts and scenes. Use the Freytag pyramid to formally map out the number of scenes. This can be done on note cards or rearranged until they fit a plot structure that you prefer. Strong plot lines have many things in common. Despite differences in tone or genre, there is a momentum that keeps the plot moving from one point to the next. Usually, this momentum is created by having characters with clear objectives that they are pursuing through the play. Strong plot lines also include meaningful conflict, where multiple characters are invested in the outcome of the conflict. Characters. At this point, out of necessity, you will have begun to discuss characters that will be needed in this series of events. Fully explore the character analysis questions and guideposts for each of the characters in your play. Dialogue. In order to start this, it really is just important to put the pen to the page. Using writing exercises from earlier in the unit, or drafting monologues from the perspectives of particular characters, or even improvising scenes and confrontations that must occur in the script, and then writing down the best of that improvisation is a great way to get started. You should spend several days coming up with active dialogue and unique voice of specific characters for each scene. As scenes are written, they should be read aloud and self-assessed, then edited, and when satisfied, the scenes or series of scenes that you're ready to share should be given for public feedback. Ultimately, you want a final staged reading of the whole 10-minute play. Once the script is complete, the next stage is to produce a rehearsed staged reading of the entire play for public feedback. This process is slightly different from the reading of the scripts for individual feedback when you're reading just small sections. The formal staged reading is a rehearsed presentation of the play for a live audience. This is often followed by a talkback where the audience is guided through a critical response process. For more detailed information on the critical response process, please take a look at our video on critiquing with kindness, where we look through Liz Lerman's approach to critiquing a work in progress. Much of the same preparation and procedures go into a fully staged production that go into a staged reading. The participants in a staged reading. A good staged reading will require the following. A director will interpret the text and lead a cast through a cohesive unpacking of the text and help to make choices for the way in which the reading will be presented to the audience. Preferably, the director is not the playwright, though sometimes it is. It is crucial that the playwright is comfortable with the choice of the director. The director is responsible for the casting and decision-making with regards to the performance of the text. Actors. Each character should be played by different actors if possible. The actors will rehearse and read the dialogue from a seated position. A stage manager. All notes, decisions, and technical concerns that grow out of the rehearsal process are documented by the stage manager for implementation during the performance. Stage directions and scene titles should be read aloud during this rehearsed performance. This is often done by the stage manager. There are many lessons located in the TRL, or the teacher resource link, available on the Godot website. We're going to take a look at some of the screenshots of the available resources related to playwriting in multiple classes. You can download this PDF from the Godot Fine Arts website under Theater Resources. This is from Acting 1, Lesson Plan 1, the 10-minute play. There are resources here and writing exercises that you might use in order to go about crafting a 10-minute play or prepping for a 10-minute play. Some of the very same exercises that we've done in this particular webinar are here. I invite you to go take a look at that in the advanced drama class. In Theater Fundamentals, there is an entire unit, Unit 4, aimed at introducing playwriting. Grades 6, 7, and 8, there are multiple units. In grade 6, it is Unit 6. The entire unit is focused on script writing. The focus of the 6th grade class really is on writing monologues and scenes. For the 7th grade class, it moves into the difference between a book and a play, and then some plot structure and script writing exercises. And then for 8th grade, it moves into a script writing plan. Again, the difference between a book structure and a play structure, plot structure, and script writing exercises. These also come with resources that help a student map out a full 10-minute play. And then dramatic writing, the entirety of dramatic writing could be used, or pieces could be used for introducing playwriting or playwriting exercises in a classroom. But there is an entire unit on script writing. That is Unit 2. This is Plays and Playwriting. It has a great deal of exercises in PowerPoint. So what I'd love you to do now is to pause the video and go into the TRL, click through some of these links, compare a few, see if there are any that work for you. I'd love to know what you're doing in your classroom. Are there any of these resources that could be used that you find useful, or you have something that would be incredible to share in the community? The point of these communities absolutely is to spark dialogue between teachers across Georgia. Thank you so much for registering and downloading this webinar. Please feel free to leave thoughts in the communities and let us know what is useful for you, and let us know if there's anything you would like to see in the future.
For additional questions, please contact the Fine Arts team. Jessica Booth, Paul McLean, Casey Hall.